my name is Taylor. Welcome to my little corner of the internet. Today we are going to be talking about all things no/low buy and why I chose to do a no/low buy this year, why I'm combining the two terms in general, what it means, and kind of my parameters, perspectives, opinions on it, and why I think it's a great idea for a lot of people, especially if you're young like me. I'm 23 years old for context. I live with a partner, so a lot of my expenses are shared, but I also do have more expenses than my partner does. So if you're interested in just having like a super chill conversation, grab your beverage of choice and let's get into it. The thing I really want to point out before we get too far along into the video is that there is huge amounts of privilege when talking about a no/low buy year, and that is something that I haven't really seen other creators talk about when they talk about their no/low buy year. I have watched countless TED Talks, day-to-day vloggers, YouTubers. I've met people, who have done no/low buy years, and I love to hear everybody's different perspectives and how they're implementing it into their life. But the thing I feel like is always missing is just the acknowledgement of privilege in being able to do a no/low buy year. This ability to be able to spend on non-essentials is a huge privilege, and the ability to save is a huge privilege, and it's something I'm extremely grateful for, and I don't want that to come across as in any way that I'm ungrateful for where I am, because I know that's not the case for a lot of people. So that's just kind of my 2 cents that I really think needed to be said. So before we kind of get into my experience with a no/low buy, I thought it might be valuable to point out the difference between a no versus low buy year. So basically, a no buy year is going to be where you're only spending money on the absolute essentials, such as food and rent or housing, and leaving basically no room for non-essentials such as like clothing and entertainment. Whereas a low buy year, I basically view it as like a stricter form of budgeting. So you're still kind of focusing the majority of your money on those absolute essentials, but you're also leaving a little bit of room for like entertainment and, I don't know, maybe say like gifts for people and stuff like that. So those are kind of the differences between the two. And I thought that was valuable information because I'm kind of combining the two. So I'm essentially doing a no buy this year, but I'm also leaving like the slightest bit of wiggle room for things such as like coffee with friends. Like if I go maybe like once every 2 months, even though those aren't essentials, I still think it's valuable to ensure that you're leaving a little bit of wiggle room for the quality of your life and maintaining things such as friendships and, setting aside money for gifts, which is one of my love languages. I definitely love gift giving. So I'm leaving a little bit of wiggle room for things such as those, but I'm not going so far as like, I'm not buying any new clothing this year. I'm not buying, say any like home decor this year unless I've like, something pops up and I've had it written down on my list forever. That's just kind of how I am doing my no/low buy year and why I kind of combine the two for myself. My biggest inspiration behind choosing to do a no/low buy year honestly has everything to do with my finances and more. So basically, I have been budgeting, like just simple budgeting, since June of 2024, where I basically just kept track of every single expense and my income and everything, and I would basically just see the differences between each, how much money I was saving, how much money I wasn't saving, and was just kind of finding where I was putting the majority of my money for the year. What that led me to find at the end of the year is that I hadn't saved like any money at all. I actually started 2024 with more money in my bank account than I ended the year with, and that wasn't because I'm a frivolous spender by any means. If you know me personally, you know that I am someone who has been penny pinching since I was collecting Easter eggs when I was like 7 and putting them into my bank account. Like, I'm not a frivolous spender by any means, but I did have a lot of expenses come up in 2024 that kind of pushed me over that limit where I couldn't match my income to my spending. That was definitely a huge motivator for me to figure out how to implement a no/low buy into 2025 and just into my daily routines. So I just wanted to point out the 3 things that I have kind of decided to focus on when it comes to the financial aspect of doing a no/low buy year. So the first one is building my savings. As I mentioned earlier, I wasn't really thinking ahead when it came to all of the financial expenditures that I was making last year. So I didn't really save any money, and that is something that I'm definitely focusing the majority of my financial attention on this year. The second thing is that I want to pay off my car loan quicker. So I've actually been doing this for about 8 months now. Like I mentioned, I started budgeting in June of 2024, which is also about the same time that I started paying off my car loan quicker. For context, my car loan is $339 US every month, but I have decided to pay it off more aggressively, so I am now able to pay it off about $400 every month, and that is a comfortable amount for me. I know that may not be the case for everyone, but a huge reason I'm doing that is because the longer my loan is, the more interest it's accruing on, and the more I gotta pay, and that's not doing me any good. And the third kind of financial aspect of this for me is that I want to implement better and more sustainable budgeting hacks and tips and tricks and everything like that. Sorry, there were just birds that were flying out by my window. I've mentioned this quite a few times. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I started budgeting a few months ago, but basically it was just me tracking my expenses. I wasn't really setting aside any money that I may have had left over. I wasn't rolling money over every month. I saw every month that my income was lower than my expenses, and that was kind of a bell going off in my head, but it really didn't send full alarm bells until the end of the year when I looked at how many months I had more money coming in, but most months it was my expenses were more than the money I was bringing in. So even though I have enough money, and I'm so grateful and so privileged to be able to have all of that, I also was essentially living paycheck to paycheck and was not saving any of the money that I was working so hard for. That definitely was not a good feeling, so I'm definitely implementing better budgeting. One way that I am doing that is that I actually do not use the same budgeting free Excel spreadsheet that I got from a YouTube comment. Instead, I did go on Etsy and I bought a budgeting template for 97 cents, I think. I looked for the cheapest and most cohesive budgeting template that I could possibly get. That would also work for me in this stage of my life, so I don't need a super fancy one with investments and multiple streams of income at this point in my life. So I was like, this is a great starting point for me, and this is a better way for me to set goals and to kind of see all my different savings. And yeah, I will leave that linked in my description box below in case you are interested in seeing the budgeting template that I use, because I do think it's really great for where I am at this stage in my life. Another huge reason why I have chosen to do a no/low buy, and I know it's a huge reason for other people, is honestly for sustainability purposes. I was involved in some sustainability groups while I was at university, and I definitely want to practice what I preach. And for the most part, I honestly don't buy anything that's brand new. I repurpose a lot of things. I mean, I'm someone who digs the wax out of candles and will repurpose the wax in the candle jars and try to use everything to its full capacity basically. And I also don't buy any brand new clothes. I never shop fashion. Not saying that I never have. I'm definitely not a perfect person, and there's a lot of learning that obviously comes the more that you age and the more that you live. I have realized that a lot of the clothes that I have accumulated over the years I haven't worn, and even though I've thrifted them, I think that's a huge misconception, is that thrifting is automatically better than shopping because they see it as oh, it's not fast fashion. But there is a huge consumerism issue in thrifting as well. People going to the thrift stores, buying a bunch of things because it's really cheap, and then they just end up back in the thrift stores because they never wear them, and that eventually ends up in the landfill. So I'm always going to advocate for thrifting or buying things secondhand or borrowing clothes or everything like that, but also just kind of doing that with intention just as much as you would if you were to buy something new. So that's definitely a huge piece of this as well. I think another big reason why a lot of people choose to do no/low buy years is because of lifestyle creep. And basically, if you don't know what that is, it's essentially if you have more money, it equals more shopping. So it's basically living outside of your means, because even if you have more income, say it's an extra $100 a month, then you automatically think, oh, I have an extra $100 to spend, whereas that might not really be the case. It's an extra $100 that you could have put towards savings or something like that. So you start to buy more expensive clothes, maybe you get a new car, maybe you go and get coffee more, and it kind of just starts to build this habit where you're starting to spend more and more money, and you may not be able to really keep up with it, even though maybe this number says that you can or that you should. This is also really popular, I think, for a lot of people who are entering adulthood, where you have this newfound sense of freedom. So you're like, oh, this is my money and now I can spend it. But you're maybe not realizing that, like, oh, I can't really keep up with like my income and my expenditures, and you know, my income being more. And that's definitely something that I struggled with a lot last year, and I definitely just want to note that, because even though a lot of the expenses that I had in 2024 were things outside of my control, such as medical and car expenses, there were parts of the year last year where I bought things that I necessarily didn't need. But even this like comforter that I'm literally leaning against right now, like I spent like probably $200 to $300 on this, and we had a comforter that worked perfectly fine, but I was so like itching to, you know, have a more like adult comforter. It's like, what does that even mean? You know, like the one that we had was fine. And that's kind of where the sustainability portion of all of this comes into play. And that's why I kind of highlighted, like, I'm definitely not a perfect person, but I'm definitely trying to be better and better each time. So this was kind of the one expense that like I could really think of, and was definitely like one of those like higher expenses where it was just kind of more of like a lifestyle creep, and definitely something I wanted to just be fully transparent on, because I definitely know I'm not the only one, and people make mistakes, and that's part of living. But that's why I've chosen to do a no/low buy year, because I know that I can do better, and I want to encourage other people to kind of get a hold of their finances, so that way they can live happier lives and more financially secure lives, if that is possible, of course. So now that we've kind of gone over why people might choose to do a low/no buy year, why I did, and why I think it's such a great idea for other people too, I want to give you a little January recap. So my first month of the year doing it, my first ever month doing a no/low buy year, and kind of my insights, things I might change for February, as well as just how it has impacted my finances in general. I also want to point out that I would not know any of this information if it wasn't for using a budget template. You can obviously track your expenses through your bank account, and maybe if you're able to create your own Excel spreadsheet with graphs and stuff, that would also be very helpful. But this is definitely, I'm a visual learner, so this is definitely the way that my brain works best, and is able to make budgeting more fun for me, which is something I never would have maybe thought growing up. So I definitely highly recommend keeping track of your finances in any kind of way. So I will definitely leave my budget template that I use currently linked down below. And I just want to tell you about what I think is so great about the budget template that I use. So I'm able to kind of track my income on one category, and then I'm also able to track my fixed expenses, my just like typical expenses, so like things like groceries and gas, and then like my car loan or any other kind of debts that you might have. So it's kind of split into 3 categories, and then I log each expense underneath, and then that automatically just brings it into a total. So it kind of does all the work for me, so I'm able to more effectively and efficiently budget. So I think it's really great. So this month I brought in an income that was actually more than my expenses, which it's like, wow, oh my god, that's literally what everybody should be doing. It's hard in this economy, okay? We talked about the ability of to be able to save is definitely a privilege in this year, and like especially just living in the United States of America at this time. And I'm even, you know, even as a very privileged person, it's definitely very difficult to save in this economy. So if you're struggling to save and it seems like it's near impossible for you, I just want you to know that you're not alone. That's literally the biggest reason why I'm making this video, is because I just want everybody to know that, like, no matter how silly you think that it is, that like you can't save, you can't get on top of your finances, and you know that you're in this like privileged position to be able to save and you can't. I just made this video because I want you to know that you're not alone, and this is very typical, I would say, for a lot of other people. We're getting on top of our finances this year. That's my thesis. This past month, I brought in an income of $3,135.05, and my non-fixed expenses were $1,403.99, and then my fixed expenses is my car loan, which I pay $400 every month, which I mentioned earlier, and then my rent is $511. So that brings my expenses $2,314.99 on my fixed, debt, and just general expenses combined. So that brings my money that I was able to save to $820.06 which might not seem like a lot to some people. It might seem like a bunch of money to some people. And to me, it does feel like a bunch of money because my original goal for January was to save $500. So I actually have two different goals that I want to save for this year, and I wanted to put $250 into each kind of pot each month for those, and I am so happy to say that I was actually able to save more money than that. So I was able to hit that $250 goal into each of those, so $500 total, and I was able to save $320.06 that now I have as like extra income. And this is where I want to point out that this is not where I'm gonna let my lifestyle creep kind of get to me. I'm not gonna go and spend that money on clothes or anything that I don't need, because I am still doing this no/low buy year. Any of that money, it's not extra. This is money that I worked for and that I am saving. So this extra income then is going to go into my savings account, and I'm also going to start looking at investments and putting money into like a 401k or retirement fund and things of that nature. So I'm super excited to be able to finally get on top of my finances, and it just feels like it's been a long time coming. So I'm definitely very proud of myself. So I just wanted to make this video to show you that like it very much is possible for you to probably save more money than you are spending. Another piece of that I wanted to point out is that a lot of the money that I ended up spending this month came from unforeseen expenses, such as someone hit my car at the beginning of this month. Even though I have car insurance, I still had to pay for the rental insurance for the rental car. That is something that I chose to do because someone hit my car. Like, I did not, I didn't want to not have the insurance because the insurance covers like literally that exact reason why my car had to be fixed. So I ended up having that unforeseen expense, as well as some unforeseen medical expenses that came up this month. I had to have some medical concerns that had to be addressed, and it was like, well, I have to pay the money now. And you can even set up payment plans and everything, but things are still going to be expensive, and that is with health insurance that I'm so grateful to have. But there's such a thing as hitting a deductible, and it is the beginning of the year. So yeah, even with all of those unforeseen circumstances, I was still able to save all of that money, and I'm very proud of myself for it. And I do feel very grateful and very privileged to be able to save money in this economy, especially as much as I was able to this month. And if anything, it's motivated me to keep saving and see how much I can kind of progress throughout the year, and just feel really proud of myself for tackling my finances this year. And that's why I made this video. I want to encourage other young people such as myself, and honestly, no matter how old you are, to take control of your finances this year. Try out a no/low buy week, month, year, you name it. A year is definitely a long commitment, but I know that this is something that I'm super passionate about. I know that not every month this year is going to be perfect. I definitely know that, but for January, I'm feeling pretty proud. So yeah, if you're interested in kind of following me along on this journey, then please subscribe. I would love to kind of give recaps every month, or just kind of give a recap at the end of the year. So yeah, please comment any tips or tricks for how you are saving/budgeting this year, and I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Okay, bye.